Hey everybody. Today's video lecture is going to look at the psychology of voting. So the factors that go into the thought process of whether or not somebody is going to actually show up and vote on election day, and then the things that they consider on how to decide who to vote for. So in your note packet, find the slide that starts with video lecture. As always, take the notes in the packet, jot down any questions that you have, and we'll cover them together in class tomorrow. So, to begin, we want to talk about the idea of political efficacy. The idea of political efficacy is your sense of how much your vote matters. Should you vote? Will it make a difference? And a lot of people ask themselves that question, does one vote matter? Because one vote won't determine the outcome of an election. So some people say, well, why try? But the problem is that if millions of people have that same thought process, we lose out on millions of votes. And millions of votes will absolutely have an impact on the outcome of an election. So people with higher levels of political efficacy would say, yes, absolutely, my one vote does matter. There are also people that have very low political efficacy that don't believe their vote matters and therefore don't vote. Now, one of the things that people consider is kind of the cost benefit analysis of voting. And for many, voting is costly, not in terms of money, but in terms of the time and effort that it takes to go vote. The first thing we look at is the day of the week that elections are held on. They're held on Tuesdays. Why a Tuesday? Why this random day of the week when other countries have their elections on weekends, or they have election day be a national holiday where everybody has off of work and all they have to do is show up and vote. Or sometimes countries even have multiple days that voters are able to go and cast their ballot. So why Tuesday, a day when people may need to take time off of work or they have to run their kids all over the place and they can't make it to the polls? So that itself could be a cost. And then the time that it takes to really learn about and understand the candidates. It takes time to be a truly informed voter. And then that question of, is it rational to vote? Does it make sense? Am I going to get something out of it? So the rational person will vote if the costs are outweighed by the benefits. So for example, the cost, the time that it takes, is outweighed by the fact that you can help your preferred candidate win and what the impacts of that might be. So if the rational person says yes, the benefits definitely outweigh the costs, then we're going to have to figure out how to vote. And so people kind of in deciding that rational piece, they look at policy differences between candidates. They have a strong preference for one candidate over the other. They have that high sense of political efficacy, so they feel like, yes, their one vote will make a difference. And there's also oftentimes tied with that a sense of civic duty, that as a good American, we should vote. It's our responsibility to democracy. Voting is a way that we help protect and preserve the democracy that has been created for us. Now, this idea of political efficacy and civic duty, this is something that we as a nation really struggle with. We have fairly low voter turnout in comparison to other nations, and we have a very high level of political apathy. Political apathy meaning that people just don't care about politics, so therefore they don't vote. They don't pay attention. They're not concerned with the outcomes. And we see a generational gap in that for sure, that younger Americans are more likely to be politically apathetic than older Americans. And part of that is a generational thing. You start to realize the older you get how much these political decisions impact your life. We know that older people turn out to vote at higher rates than younger Americans, and there's definitely a correlation between that. The more you know, the more informed you are, the higher sense of political efficacy and civic duty, the higher levels you will turn out at the polls. So we can see that there's definitely an apathy problem, that in the early 2000s, as many as 68 or so percent of young people 18 to 29 did not follow politics at all. And that number hovers at around half or so today. we can kind of see then this direct correlation of age and political knowledge, that the older you get, the more you're likely to know about politics and government. Now, in deciding when to vote, there are different models of voting behavior, different ways that people decide who they're ultimately going to vote for. The rational choice model is probably the easiest and most straightforward. I have candidate A or B, and I'm going to pick the candidate that will ultimately benefit me the most if they're elected. So many voters pick that, right? I know a little bit about these guys that are running, and candidate B is suited for my preferences. I vote for that. Retrospective voting is a model of voting behavior where you evaluate somebody's performance in the past and vote based on that. So we look backward. What has this person done in office? Do I want to vote them back into office for another term? Or are we ready for a change? So retrospective voting, it's looking in the rearview mirror, looking behind, looking at the past to inform that decision. Prospective voting is the opposite. It's where we're looking ahead. You're voting based on what you believe somebody can do, what they'll be able to accomplish if elected, the changes, the promises that they're making. So rather than evaluating somebody on past performance, you're evaluating them and trying to guess what they could do and how successful they could be. And then finally, party line voting means that you simply vote party lines. You always vote for Republicans for every position that comes up on an election, or you always vote for Democrats. So you toe the party line, you're a loyal party voter, and you are always going to vote for one party over the other. Now, party identification becomes a crucial component for many voters because most voters don't pay very close attention to politics. So we've talked about the idea of that party label and how crucial it is to an election, and it's one of those things that parties provide, kind of that cue to voters, what candidates stand for. That party identification can provide perspective, and similar to that strong loyalty that we see for a sports team, the diehard Packer fan, through thick and thin, they have strong loyalty to a party that they'll rarely change side, and so they're always just voting for that one party no matter what. But along with that, party identification can give a cue to who is on one side. So I see the Republican Party label, that's an indication to me that person's probably going to align with my views. And it helps to simplify candidate selection. Even if you really don't know much about the candidates, you have an idea of what they stand for because of their party identification. That party identification used to be the strongest predictor of voting behavior, but it's been a little bit more difficult to predict because party loyalty has been decreasing since the 1960s. Rather than that strong party loyalty, we've talked about that concept of de-alignment, where it's not as much about the party anymore, it's about voting on the issues. I don't want that rigid party identification. I'm more of a moderate or independent. And so we see what are called kind of these floating voters who float between parties. Sometimes they vote for Republicans, sometimes they vote for Democrats, maybe even within one election, they split ticket, meaning on that same ballot, they're voting for some Democrats and some Republicans. And these floating voters tend to be younger voters because they have less established party preferences at that time. Your political ideology tends to solidify the older you get. And then we have some voters who vote based on policy. So party identification is kind of the easy way, right? I'm voting based on the party that I believe I align most closely to. But policy voting is not easy because it takes a higher level of sophistication in your political knowledge. You have to know a lot, not only about your own preferences, but then also about the candidates. So you have to do the research and put in the time because policy voting means that you are going to vote based on really educated preferences towards the current issues going on. So you have to have a clear sense of your own preferences, know where the candidates stand on the issues, the differences between the candidates, and then kind of go through your notes and ultimately vote for the candidate who has the preferences closest to your own, understanding that your preferences may not perfectly line up with either candidate, and then making that judgment call of who you align most closely to. Policy voters have to be careful as well because candidates will, intentionally be vague on certain policy stances and issues because they don't want to say things that will ultimately alienate voters. So when we go into this question of who votes, how do we decide who to vote for? There's a lot of that mental game involved, and a lot of cost benefit analysis and thinking that goes into it. All right, that is the end of our video lecture. Review through your notes. If you had any questions, as always, we will be happy to take them in class tomorrow.